This episode is made possible by our sponsor, OmegaBrite Wellness. I've taken their omega-3 supplements for many years, and so has my wife, and that's why I invited them to sponsor my podcast. I'm proud to have them. You can find all of their products online at OmegaBriteWellness.com, and Bright is intentionally misspelled B-R-I-T-E, OmegaBriteWellness.com. This episode is also sponsored by Landmark College in beautiful Putney, Vermont. Learn more about the college of choice for students who learn differently at their virtual open house on March 19th. Register at landmark.edu/visit. Landmark.edu/visit. Or by clicking the link in the show notes. Hello, this is Dr. Ned Hallowell for Distraction. Thank you so much, as always, for joining me on our wonderful podcast. Today, I'm very thrilled, happy, honored, and joyful to welcome my wonderful friend of some over 40 years, Dr. John Ratey, co-author of our new book, ADHD 2.0. John has been on the podcast in the past, of course, and we've talked about everything under the sun. I won't recap the entirety of our relationship, as it would take way too long, but we have been with each other through thick and thin, births, divorces, triumphs, setbacks, you name it. And we've been there on the squash court and elsewhere for decades, over 4 decades. And it's so wonderful to have John. And we really grew up together in the world of ADD. We sort of found out about our own ADD roughly in the same time, around 1979, 1980, and have been fiddling around with this condition ever since. So, without further ado, welcome my great friend John to Distraction.
Well, it's great to be back. Every time I'm on, it's fun to be on with you and try to share our knowledge, our enthusiasm, our understanding that we have about attention deficit disorder, because there's so much misunderstanding out there yet. Even though it's certainly, people are certainly much more aware of it, but there's still these myths that persist.
Well, we're leading the fight to make ADHD user-friendly. We're leading the fight to blow up stigma and replace it with pride, rooted in knowledge about this condition. And a first step we took in our new book, ADHD 2.0, was to offer an alternative name. Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder is just a big mouthful of syllables that conveys pathology, sickness, badness, yuckiness, and would scare anyone away. Who wants to have a deficit disorder and throw in hyperactivity? And so we were saying, and it'd be one thing if it were accurate. It's not accurate. It's not a deficit of attention. We have an abundance of attention. Our challenge is to control it. So we came up with the acronym VAST, because it is a vast condition. It covers everything in your life. And the letters stand for Variable Attention Stimulus Trait. An emphasis on trait, because if you manage it right, it can become like a superpower. And if you manage it wrong, it can ruin your life in many ways. So the thrust is to try to take the condition from the position of stigma, which is where ADHD places it purely, and move it to a neutral place where it can be an asset or a liability, depending on how you manage it. What reactions have you seen to our proposal of this alternative term, John?
Well, mostly it's been positive, especially by people who I'm treating and have a connection with. They sort of they like the idea of removing deficit disorder from their mix, because a lot of them still come in, as I'm seeing more and more new patients, still come in feeling that it's a bad thing to have on their docket. They don't want to have this deficit business going on, and a disorder to boot. So by putting it into a more neutral, a more everyman and woman kind of trait, we see that people are more accepting of it. Now, there are a lot of people who have been ravaged or who haven't managed their ADD well, and this is a problem, and they can be very angry about it. I have not met that in response to that, but I know you have. And
well, just in passing comments, one person made a comment on my TikTok page that asking me, "Will you stop romanticizing this condition that ruins people's lives?" And I think we want to be careful to say we know that this condition, if it's not dealt with properly, can be horrible. I mean, people who have ADHD, VAST, are higher in pretty much every negative statistic you can name, from early death to suicide to depression to substance use to divorce to unemployment to traffic accidents. You name the negative outcome, and people who have ADHD will be higher in that group. So in no way did John and I mean to imply this is just all roses and happiness at all. It's a real struggle to unwrap this gift, as we like to say. But at the same time, while we fully acknowledge that it can be a horrible trial, whether you're a parent of a child or you have it yourself, can be a horrible ordeal trying to get to the good part. It can be gotten to, and I think that's really the message we know, because we've been treating it in people of all ages for 40 years. So we know this. This is not speculation based on a hope and a prayer. This is based on what we see in our consulting rooms and have been seeing for 40 years. So we know it's true. And both of us have the condition ourselves, so we've lived it. And we've both suffered some of the downside, but mostly taken advantage of the upside. And that's what we're trying to convey. And I'm sorry if it bothers some people that we're talking about the positive side of it. But I urge you to try to listen, because you can get there too, if you get the right help. Now, people say, well, what if I can't get access to the right help? Well, that's why we wrote this book. This book, which, by the way, is by far the shortest of our books. The meat of the book is only 120 pages. That every one of those pages has meat in it. And if you read this book, you can get pretty much everything you need to know to begin to unwrap the gift, to minimize the damage the condition does and maximize the positives that it can convey.
Right. In one of our chapters, we list the negatives of the symptoms of issues that the trait will have. But on the flip side, right beside it, are the positives by looking at it differently or by using it differently. From hyperactivity to incredible amount of energy and passion, which ADD people have. They need to get behind that. And by developing the right job, the right subject, the right relationship, the right friends, the right organizations that they belong to, that foster their incredible energy that they can then use to make life wonderful for them, make life richer for them. And to recognize that this can be done is a really important issue. And a lot of the adults that I see know that, but yet they've stumbled for other reasons. And their family sometimes are mad at them because they have so much energy. My wife has the trait as well, pretty interesting, but she's always moving around. Oh my God. And no one would have ever called her ADD, but she certainly is. And she recognizes that and now, but the energies that she has is amazing. And it even puts me to shame, which, I resent, but it's the way it is. So it helps.
You've got plenty of energy, John. I wouldn't worry about that.
I know, but
no, but all of these, even the core symptom of distractibility, the thing that gave the condition its name, the flip side of that is curiosity. If you don't care what the noise is out there, you won't get distracted by it. We want to, what's that? What's this? What's that? What's this? What's in that Petri dish? Oh my God, it's penicillin. If you don't have the ability to be distracted by something seemingly trivial, you'll never discover how important it might be. So each one of them has a flip side. Impulsivity is my favorite one. That's impulsivity is supposedly the most dangerous aspect of this condition and gets people into the most trouble. But what is creativity? But impulsivity gone right. You don't plan to have a creative idea. You don't say it's 2:00, time for my creative idea. No, they come impulsively. They depend upon some degree of disinhibition. They depend upon spontaneity. They depend upon a porous unconscious that will allow the random, the irrelevant, the grotesque even to bubble up. And the next thing you know, you've got yourself a new image, a new plot, a new invention, a new drug. And that's why you find this condition among highly creative people, because the upside of our disinhibition or our impulsivity is creativity.
Hey, this is Sarah, producer of Distraction. I'm here to give you a heads up about a feature you'll be hearing at the end of this episode. Dr. Carol Locke, the founder of OmegaBrite Wellness, one of the sponsors of this podcast, returns to Distraction this week to share more information about the COVID vaccine, in particular how the vaccines were able to be developed so quickly. Dr. Locke has been involved in conversations with the Harvard Medical School, the CDC, and the FDA regarding the latest vaccine research, and she'll be sharing some of that information at the end of this episode. And for Distraction listeners, Dr. Locke's company, OmegaBrite Wellness, is currently offering 20% off your first order when you use the promo code DISTRACTION during checkout at OmegaBriteWellness.com. And speaking of features, have you listened to one of our new Monday Q&A episodes? Yesterday's listener question was about how to guard your time and learning to say no. Every Monday, Dr. Hallowell answers a question from one of our listeners. If you have a question for Dr. H, write an email or record a voice memo and send it to connect@distractionpodcast.com. We'd like to thank Foreman School in Litchfield, Connecticut for sponsoring this new Q&A series. Foreman is a co-ed college prep school dedicated to empowering bright students who learn differently in grades 9 through postgraduate. You can find them online at formanschool.org.
There's so much that can be made of having this variable attention stimulus trait. Right. You can make a lot out of it, and that's all we try to do in all of our books, actually, from Driven to Distraction on up, is to sort of emphasize the positive side of things. And we've gotten lots of criticism about that as throughout the years, but people now are recognizing, I think, and I hope, that it can be a tremendous, as you like to say, a tremendous amount of gifts that they need to be unwrapped. Right, they need to be discovered.
And also to free them from the stigma. I was on the phone this morning with a mom who was saying, my son has ADHD, and I can't get the teachers to say anything other than try harder, needs more discipline. And he should buckle down. And she said, what can I do? I mean, how can I teach them about it? And I said, well, bring in some of my books and, but you need more than that. You need a groundswell. And that's what we're trying to create, that these kids are not lazy, willful, undisciplined. They've got a race car brain with bicycle brakes, and they need help strengthening their brakes.
Right. And then once they get behind it, then and find their right passion, which can be the center of the center board for them, to find something that they really love. And this then will help carry them through, and teachers that are great will appreciate that and help kids to get to that and foster that.
Finding the creative outlet is a big deal. You also have emphasized in another book you wrote called Spark, the formative power of physical exercise. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Oh, sure. I love to talk about exercise because it's so important. A popular thing that's growing is the tread desks. There's desks with a treadmill underneath that you'll walk on constantly all day long. You're seeing it everywhere now. And, this is a way of managing your attention, because when you move, you turn those brain cells on that are involved with keeping your attention going, keeping it focused, keeping you extending your ability to use your executive function, so-called. And that's what we need. That's what our people with VAS really need. They do so much better while they're moving and after they're moving, and if they have a steady diet of exercise, it makes life so much better. Not only does it improve their attention and keep it going, but improves their anxiety and their mood and motivation and decreases their cravings, which is all can be a big problem for people with ADD. So moving is should be a big part of an ADD person's life.
Absolutely. And I think the other ways of turning on our brains that we talk about, at the top of the list, in my estimation, is the force of connection. And it's missing in so many people's lives these days because we've had to be socially distanced and, masked and so on and so forth. But you can still find connection. And I don't, in fact, I think it's been proven many times, there is no force in life more powerful than the force of connection to pretty much do everything that's positive, from reaching full potential to health to longevity to feelings of well-being, you name it. Connection instills it, extends it, develops it, promotes it. On the other hand, disconnection does the opposite. And, we're seeing an absolute skyrocket in deaths from overdose now. The latest malignant combination is fentanyl and stimulants. But the reason people are turning to addictive substances is disconnection. It's what drives pretty much everything negative in life, from depression to ennui to being lost and not know where to go. At its most distilled, the connection is called love. And that is the most powerful force in life for anything good. Love is the turbocharge of life. But then, love is a very distilled and intense version of connection. But you can have a close connection to an author whom you never meet, or a piece of music, or my favorite is a dog, or a cat. We just got 2 cats, or to a sunset, or to a memory, or to a hope. These are all forms of connection. And if we cultivated connection intentionally, if people really put it at the top of the list, nothing can do as much for a person in terms of the positives that you're looking for in life than connection. And sadly, very few things can ruin a life as much as disconnection, loneliness, isolation. Now, don't misunderstand, because you can be a connected introvert. You can be someone who's not out there, with other people, but feel very, very connected to ideas, to your creative outlet, to your dog, what have you. So you don't have to be extroverted. But the thing that's toxic is loneliness. If you're lonely, that's not good for you. And so you want to find some way. And my patients who say they can't, I say, get a dog. A dog can teach anyone the art of connection. So, and then the other one right at the top of my list, for John, it's exercise. My top two are number one, connection, and then number two, having a creative outlet. We are born to create. People with vast ADHD, we are born to build, discover, create, shape. That's why we're here. And if we're not building something, creating something, we tend to get logy. We tend to get depressed. ADHD 2.0 is my 21st book, and I'm getting ready for the next one because I know if I don't, I'll get depressed. I need to have that creative outlet, and I think that's a part of VAST that we've overlooked. Those of us in the field, we've pushed other things that are more mechanical, like medication, but we haven't really pushed not exercise. We haven't really pushed connection and a creative outlet. I want to talk to you for a moment about Landmark College. Landmark College in beautiful, beautiful Putney, Vermont. If you have never been to Putney, Vermont, go there. And when you're there, if you have any interest in students who learn differently, go take a look at Landmark College. They are the masters of helping kids with, I should say young adults, with ADHD and other learning differences. People like me, I have ADHD and I have dyslexia, and I'm, different. But Landmark looks at someone like me and says, different in a good way, and let us help you learn how to present your good side and compensate for your not so good side by working with our amazing teachers here at this beautiful campus in beautiful Putney, Vermont. Landmark College really is the best of its kind, and if you are a student or you have someone in your life who wants to get on with education, Landmark College is the place to go if you happen to have ADHD or dyslexia or other learning difference. Landmark is having a virtual open house on March 19th. March 19th. Circle the date. There's a panel for parents only to get an idea of what students will experience if they go there. And they're having a student panel, too, where current students talk about what it's like to live and learn at Landmark. That's a great way to really get a feel for a place. To register for the virtual open house, virtual meaning you don't have to go to Putney, Vermont. It's too bad, though. It's a beautiful town. To register for the virtual open house on March 19th, go to landmark.edu/visit or click the link in our show notes. Okay, let's get back to today's topic.
Well, and especially about connection, especially the medical world, the psychological world, they're beginning to recognize, especially in medicine, the power of what connection does for us physically, how it prevents us from getting sick, how it prevents aging. When you look at the anti-aging profiles, for instance, the two things that stand out in those profiles are exercise and connection. They are the two most powerful. And in fact, connection is even more powerful than my wonderful exercise component. When you look at blue zones, and there was just a big article yesterday and somewhere that I saw, a blue zone is where people stay alive till over 100. They stay happy and they're involved and they're vigorous and all that. I mean, a big emphasis there is their connection with everybody else, that they're, intermingled, they're do stuff together. They're all in all these different groups. And our friend, George Valiant, doing the grant study from Harvard, the biggest positive to have a successful life in people now in their 90s, there's a few still going, but people who studying them all the way through the 40 years of the grant study, the big thing that made life good was connection, was whether it was a stable marriage or a stable family, but it extended beyond that to being involved in their community, being involved in their church, or being involved in other organizations that they enjoyed and they got back from, they gave to and got back from. And I think that's one of the things that we've always emphasized. And now we have data. We have data to show that if you are more connected, you're going to be less sick.
Well, this is a liberating message. This book is I have a patient who said they should call us Moses because we're leading people out of bondage into freedom. And it's not us. It's the knowledge that we have to convey that is liberating, that really does lead people out of bondage, to break what Blake called the mind-forged manacles. The mind-forged manacles. With this knowledge in ADHD 2.0, you really can break the manacles that are holding you back. And you truly can find a liberation that you may never have felt, no matter what your age. Whether you're a 6-year-old or a 66-year-old, you still can find the benefit. And it is often tremendous.
Yes.
Well, John, here we are, as they say at Click and Clack, you've wasted another perfectly good hour of your life. I hope you listeners don't think this has been a waste of your time, because the information in ADHD 2.0 is truly, this is the real deal. This can set you free, set your marriage free, set your career free, set your child free, you name it. And we're very specific, very practical. John and I, are practical types, and we're very proud of this book. I have to say, we are proud of it, and I think we have good reason to be, and I hope you all will read it. And if you like it, write to us and give us your thoughts, questions, anything you'd like. That's all the time we have with my dear friend John Ratey today, but he'll be back for another visit. I can guarantee you that. And you can get a copy of our newest book, ADHD 2.0, by clicking the link in the show notes, or from Amazon or other booksellers, or from my website, drhallowell.com. That's dr, no period, HALLOWELL.com. Or from John's website, johnratey.com, JOHNRATEY.com. And, of course, you can get a copy of ADHD 2.0 wherever, as the saying goes, books are sold. Thank you, John, so much. It's so much fun to have you with us. Please keep listening after this episode for a special segment from Dr. Carol Locke of OmegaBrite Wellness. She is a genius, I'll tell you. She'll be following up on her segment from last week regarding the COVID vaccine by sharing some of the science behind how the vaccines were developed so quickly. That's coming up right after this episode. Remember to follow Distraction on social media, and please continue to reach out to us with your comments and questions. Our email address is connect@distractionpodcast.com. That's connect@distractionpodcast.com. Distraction is created by Sounds Great Media. Our audio engineer is the amazingly talented and adept Scott Person. And our producer is the always resourceful, brilliant, and graceful Sarah Gurton. I'm the rather clumsy Dr. Ned Hallowell, and thank you so much for listening.
So hello, this is Dr. Carol Locke. Another question that people have and thing that leads to misinformation is how did the vaccines come about so quickly? And this is very important to understand because flu vaccines take a long time and people are pretty familiar with flu vaccines. So they say, vaccines take a long time to develop. How did this happen so quickly? I'm worried about that. Well, this is a different type of vaccine. This is a RNA vaccine, a different type of, it's made from the genetic material that occurs in viruses. It is not a live vaccine, and it is not made like the influenza vaccine, which must be predicted. They take the current viruses this year and predict what will be occurring next year and then have to grow those in eggs over a year and purify the vaccines after they're grown. So that takes a long time and can have problems. The RNA vaccines, which are the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccine, is they take a portion of the virus's RNA. That's the virus genetic material. And they take the code for that and they inject the code for that spike protein. You hear often talk about the spike protein and you see pictures of it. That is how the virus infects our cells. So they have taken the code of how to make that spike protein, and the vaccine is made from that code, and that code is made from base pairs of nucleotides. So it's something they can construct and don't have to grow. It's not a whole virus. It's not a live or dead virus. It's a part of the viral code. That's injected in the body. The body creates that protein from that code, and then the body says, that isn't part of us, and it mounts an immune defense against that protein. So that's how the vaccine works. And the reason why it could be made so quickly, and we're so lucky, is that they had been working on coronavirus vaccine, a different one, for years. And when this coronavirus emerged, they quickly shifted and pivoted to study this one and to develop the vaccine to this one with this current genetic material, the RNA material from the current virus. That's how they could make it so quickly, and they could actually construct that vaccine out of creating different base pairs to make that code. So it's a really ingenious approach to the vaccine. It's been very safe, and they can make it and they can ramp it up rapidly, which is how we have so much vaccine now. And that's why you can know that it wasn't rushed. This has been a long time in development, and it was pivoted to this particular virus when it became a cause of a pandemic. But they had been studying COVID virus and vaccines for the coronavirus before, and they had the new technology of the RNA vaccine. So that's how that happened. And what this allows is, as different variants emerge, already from Harvard we know that they are working on third, fourth, and fifth generation vaccines to potentially protect, if needed, against variants. So it may be that people will need yearly boosters, or every 3 years we may need updates to the vaccine that we can get in booster shots, and they are working on those right now. So this is the whole world's attention in the science community is focused on the coronavirus pandemic, how to protect people, and they are watching all the variants and very rapidly working to help keep us protected. Thank you for listening, and this is Dr. Carol Locke.
The episode you just heard was made possible by my good friends at OmegaBrite Wellness. I take their supplements every day, and that's why I invited them to sponsor my podcast. Shop online at OmegaBrite, and that's BRITE wellness.com.